The following account was taken from real testimonies. Names and details have been altered for privacy.
It started as one of those trips that wasn't supposed to mean anything. Just for friends, a borrowed tent, and a stretch of untouched forest by the edge of a slow, winding river. We wanted to disconnect for a weekend. No signal, no noise, no plans. Just campfires, stars, and the kind of silence you forget you need. We left early on a Friday morning, the car heavy with gear, music, and that easy laughter that only happens when you're leaving everything behind. The river was farther than the map had promised, but when we finally saw it, shining between rows of tall birch trees, we knew we'd found the place. The water looked calm, almost still. You could see the reflection of the sky in it, blue melting into gold as the sun started to fall. We set up camp on the eastern bank, just across from an open field dotted with wildflowers. There was no one else around. No sounds but the river and the wind in the trees. That first night was perfect. We grilled, told old stories, tried to outdo each other with embarrassing memories. It felt like time had stretched itself thin, letting us live slower. But the next morning, everything started to shift, quietly, almost politely, the way bad things often do. The plan was simple: cross the river, hike through the forest on the other side, and circle back before dark. There was no bridge, but the water looked shallow enough to wade through. Lena said she could see the rocks at the bottom. "Come on, it's barely knee-deep," she laughed, already stepping in with her shoes tied around her neck. I hesitated. The air was cooler that day, and the current, though gentle, had that steady pull that never quite stops. But none of us wanted to be the cautious one, the buzzkill, so I followed. At first it was fine. The water was cold, the rocks slippery but manageable. We moved slow, joking about who would fall first. But halfway across, the bottom dropped suddenly, like a step missing in a staircase. Lena yelped, her laugh breaking into a sharp gasp. Her foot slipped, the current grabbing her legs. I reached for her hand, felt the strength of the water yank us both sideways. Behind us, Sam shouted something, his voice half lost in the rush. The river that had looked so calm was suddenly alive, dragging, twisting, swallowing sound. It wasn't deep enough to drown us, but it was deep enough to scare us. By the time we stumbled to the opposite bank, soaked and shaken, the sunlight was gone. We should have gone back then. We should have understood that some crossings aren't meant to be made twice. But the thing about being young and together is that fear doesn't stick, it slides off you in laughter. We sat on the other bank, catching our breath, making fun of our clumsy escape. "Guess we're river people now," Sam said, wringing out his shirt. Lena smiled, though her eyes kept drifting back to the water. The current looked stronger from this side, the river darker. We spent the day hiking, cutting through the woods, chasing sunlight between branches. By late afternoon, the forest opened into a clearing with a view of the hills. It was beautiful, one of those places that makes you stop talking, but beauty doesn't mean safe. We hadn't noticed how far we'd gone, or how quickly the light was fading. By the time we reached the river again, it was almost unrecognizable. The rain from the mountains had come down river, silent but fast. What had been knee-deep that morning was now a restless, churning line of gray water. Lena was the first to speak. "We can't cross that," but Sam shook his head. "If we wait till morning, it might be worse." He was right, or maybe just convincing enough to sound right. So we stood there, for silhouettes on the bank, trying to measure risk against fear. The sound of the river filled every pause between us. The first step into the water was colder than before. Not just cold, but biting, like it didn't want us back. We linked arms this time, one after another, slow and careful. The current pulling at our knees, our balance, our breath. Halfway through, I realized how strong it really was. How it had changed while we weren't looking. The rain upstream had turned it from a mirror into a force. "Stop!" Lena shouted, but it was too late. Sam's foot slipped on a rock slick with moss. He fell sideways, his weight jerking all of us off balance. The world tilted, water and sky blurring into one violent color. I felt the current rip the air from my chest. Heard Lena scream my name, and then, nothing but water. When I came up for air, the world was chaos, white spray, shouting, the cold hammering through every breath. The current had me before I could think. It wasn't violent like in the movies, it was worse. It was steady, patient, as if the river knew exactly where it wanted to take me. Grab the branch, I heard Sam shout somewhere ahead. But all I saw were flashes, his hand, Lena's red jacket, the blur of trees rushing past on the far bank. I kicked, reached, felt the ache in my shoulders burn. The water wasn't deep enough to drown easily, but it was fast enough to drag me where I didn't want to go. Each time I tried to stand, my foot hit something sharp, then slipped again. And then, suddenly, it was quiet. The current slowed near a bend, curling into a shallow pool beneath a cluster of fallen logs. I crawled toward the bank, coughing river water and gravel. For a moment, I just lay there, my cheek pressed against the mud, trying to tell if my friends were still shouting, or if the noise I heard was just in my head. "Lena," my voice cracked. "Nothing." I staggered up, still dizzy, scanning the water for color, the red of her jacket, the yellow of Sam's backpack. The rain had started again, soft at first, then heavier. And the river looked like it was erasing everything. I ran along the bank, slipping, calling their names until my throat went raw. Finally, I saw movement, two figures near a cluster of reeds farther downstream. Lena and Sam both soaked, both standing. Relief hit so fast it made me lightheaded. When I reached them, Lena threw her arms around me and started crying, not out of fear anymore, but exhaustion. We didn't talk. We just stood there, the three of us, soaked to the bone, watching the river rush past like it was someone else's problem now. "Where's Ethan?" Lena asked suddenly. It took a second for the name to land. Ethan, the fourth one. He'd been behind us when Sam fell. We turned together toward the river. There was no sign of him. No splash, no shout, no movement between the trees. Sam took a few steps toward the water again. Maybe he got out upstream. But even as he said it, his voice faltered. The river didn't look like a place you got out of, not now. We called his name until the light faded. Then, when our voices couldn't rise above the rain anymore, we stopped. We found a half-broken fishing shack a little way up the hill. It wasn't much, a single wall left standing, a rusted stove, and a floor scattered with leaves, but it was dry. We built a fire with what we could find, damp twigs, the lining from our packs, a few strips of paper. It smoked more than it burned, but eventually, the flame caught. No one said much that night. Every so often, one of us would stand, open the door, and look out toward the river. As if maybe Ethan would be there, walking back with that tired grin of his. He wasn't. At some point, Lena started humming quietly. It was the same tune she'd sung the first night at camp. Something cheerful then, something fragile now. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like water. Inside, the fire kept shrinking. And the space between us and what had happened grew wider by the minute. I couldn't stop thinking about the moment the river took us. How fast it all shifted from laughter to silence. How quickly you can stop being for friends on an adventure and start being three people trying not to look at each other. At dawn, the rain had stopped. Mist hung low over the water. Sam and I went back down to the riverbank. The current had slowed again, calm, reflective, indifferent. A few meters downstream, a backpack was caught between two rocks. Half submerged, the strap tangled around a branch. It was Ethan's. Inside, his phone, a waterlogged map, and a small notebook. On the first page, smeared but legible, were three words: "Don't cross back." We didn't talk much that morning. Sam sat by the fire, staring into what was left of it, and Lena stood near the edge of the trees, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the river. The mist made everything softer, the light, the sounds, even the pain. It was as if the world didn't want to acknowledge what had happened. When the sun finally broke through, I walked down to the water again. The current had quieted overnight, but it still carried that hidden strength, the kind that doesn't show itself until it decides to. I crouched near the rocks, scanning the opposite bank. Nothing. No footprints, no movement. Just the same wide, endless stretch of river pretending it hadn't taken anything from us. "We have to go," Sam said eventually, voice low but steady. Lena turned to him, disbelief flashing across her face. "Go where?" "Back to the car, to get help. There's no signal out here, if he's still out there somewhere." He didn't finish the sentence. Lena shook her head. "I'm not leaving until we find him." She looked exhausted, pale, lips cracked from the cold. But I understood. Leaving felt like betrayal. Like closing a door on something that might still be open. "We can't stay here forever," I said quietly. If the rain starts again, the river will rise. We'll be trapped too. No one argued after that. The truth had stopped needing to be said out loud. We followed the dirt path that wound along the ridge. The same trail we'd come from 2 days before, except now everything looked different. The air was heavier, the trees seemed closer, and every sound, every rustle, every creak, felt like something approaching. For hours we walked in silence. The mud sucked at our boots, and the river stayed beside us like a shadow. At one point, Lena stopped and turned to look back. "I keep thinking I'll see him walking behind us," she whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. When we reached the place where we'd first crossed, the river had changed again. The color was darker now, deep brown, swollen from the mountain rain. The rocks we'd used as stepping stones were gone. Swallowed whole, Sam picked up a branch and threw it in. It disappeared almost instantly, snatched by the current like it had never existed. "There's no way," I said. "We'd have to walk for miles upriver to find a shallow spot, maybe even longer." But Sam just stared across, jaw tight. "Then we walk." Lena didn't move. Her eyes were on the water, wide, unblinking, as if she expected it to speak. After a long silence, she said, "He told us not to cross back." We still had Ethan's notebook. It was torn, water-stained, half unreadable. But that line, "Don't cross back," was clear, deliberate. I wondered when he'd written it, before we lost him. After he'd realized something we hadn't. Lena opened it again, flipping through the pages. There were sketches of trees, little notes about what we'd eaten. Even a few lines that made us laugh before the trip started. Then, on the last page, written in small, shaky handwriting, "If you find this, I'm sorry. I thought the other side would be safer." Lena closed the notebook slowly, her hands trembling as if it burned to hold. We followed the river for hours. The forest thinned, the ground turning from mud to gravel. By afternoon, the sound of a distant road reached us, faint at first, then growing louder, when we finally stepped out of the trees. The world looked almost normal again. A dirt road, a line of power poles, and the faint hum of civilization. A truck passed, spraying dust. Sam waved it down. The driver, an old man with sunburned skin, looked at us like we'd come back from a war. "From the river?" he asked. We nodded. He frowned, shaking his head slowly. "Too much water this week. People always think they can cross. That river, it doesn't forgive." None of us spoke during the ride. The truck bounced over potholes, the air thick with the smell of wet earth and gasoline. Lena stared out the window, her reflection pale against the glass. Sam kept Ethan's notebook on his lap, thumb tracing the edge of the pages like a rosary. When the driver dropped us off near the main road, he pointed back toward the hills. "You should tell the rangers," he said softly. Then he added, almost to himself, "or maybe let the river keep its own." We reached the ranger station by early evening. It was a squat wooden building surrounded by motorbikes and muddy boots. The kind of place where everyone looked like they'd already heard too many bad stories. A man in a faded uniform came out to meet us. He listened quietly while Sam explained what had happened, the crossing, the storm, the moment Ethan disappeared. When we were done, he just nodded once, heavy and slow. "You're lucky you made it out," he said. "People underestimate that river. Every year, someone tries to cross when they shouldn't." He didn't ask why we'd done it. He didn't have to. He'd seen that mix of confidence and carelessness before. Two other rangers gathered gear, ropes, flashlights, a first aid kit. They told us to wait, so we sat outside on the steps, watching the light fade from gold to blue while the sound of the river echoed faintly through the trees. By the time we reached the river bank again, night had fallen. The rangers moved like they'd done this 100 times, calling out Ethan's name at intervals, their lights sweeping the surface of the water, their voices swallowed by the current. We followed behind them in silence. Every time they stopped to listen, my heart started to hammer. Every splash sounded like something, or someone, trying to answer. After an hour, one of the rangers turned back. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll look again at first light. The river's too fast now." Lena didn't respond. She just stood at the edge of the bank, eyes fixed on the black water. It was like she was waiting for it to give him back. They took us back to a nearby outpost for the night. A single room with thin mattresses and one flickering lantern. No one slept. Sam lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. Lena sat in the corner, hugging her knees, the notebook open beside her. Around midnight, she whispered, "Do you think he knew?" I didn't answer right away. Knew what? That it was too strong, that he wouldn't make it. Her voice broke on the last word. I started, then stopped. There was no right way to finish that sentence. I think he just wanted to help, because that's what Ethan always did. He'd been the one who calmed everyone down when things went wrong. The one who carried extra supplies just in case. The one who believed that a little risk was part of the story. We'd all believed that, until the story changed. The next morning, the Rangers returned to the river. The air was cold and clear, and a faint fog hung over the surface like breath. We followed again, not because we expected anything, but because not going would have felt worse. Hours passed, then one of the Rangers shouted. A shape near the bend, caught between rocks, half hidden by reeds. We ran, but they stopped us before we reached the edge. It was him. They covered him with a blanket, and for a long time, no one spoke. The sound of the water filled the silence. Even the birds had stopped. Lena knelt down, her hand hovering above the blanket, not touching, just trembling in the air. Sam turned away, his face hard, jaw tight. I couldn't move at all. The river looked calm again, gentle, harmless, as if it hadn't taken anything from us. As if it was already forgetting. The Rangers handled the details. The paperwork, the calls, we just followed instructions. On the drive back, none of us said a word. The world outside the window blurred into color. Trees, hills, clouds, all of it too peaceful, too normal. At one point, Lena whispered, "I keep thinking we could have waited. Just one more day." Sam didn't answer. He just reached into his pocket and pulled out Ethan's notebook, flipping through the damn pages again and again, as if something inside might tell us how to make sense of it. Weeks later, we met at Lena's apartment. The walls were covered with photos from old trips, mountains, beaches, faces grinning under bad lighting, but none from that weekend. No one had kept any. We sat there for hours, talking about everything but what mattered. When I finally left, she handed me something, a folded page from Ethan's notebook. On it, in faded ink, he'd written, "If we ever get lost, follow the sound of the river. It always knows the way back." Months later, I went back to the river alone. It was smaller than I remembered, quiet, almost gentle. The water slid past like it had no memory of us at all. I sat on the bank and placed Ethan's page on a flat stone. The ink had almost disappeared, but the words were still there. Follow the sound of the river. It always knows the way back. For a while, I listened to the water, the wind, the world moving on. And I realized that maybe he was right. The river doesn't forget, it just carries what it must. So do we.